if you could speak to how errors in terms of predictions can occur in your work. In particular, and if I have the wrong understanding, then just say that. But my understanding is that you first discern some type of archetype out of your data, and then you have to sort of drill down and try and come up with details in terms of occurrences that might explain how that archetype manifests. And that sounds like two sources of error, one at the archetype level, one at the detail level. Could you just try and elucidate a little more understanding for me on that, please? And I'm going to hang up and listen.
Thanks for the call. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Actually, we find, potentially there are two types of errors. The archetype level, if we were to get the archetype wrong for a particular time period, and then the detail. Now, of course, the devil is in the detail, and that's where we usually screw up. As I tell George, when you start mucking about in the detail, it's whatever shiny little bit of information pulls your monkey mind that we have a tendency to latch onto, and that may not be accurate. In fact, mostly when we're wrong, it's the detail levels that screw us up, not the archetype, curiously. I mean, we're usually good on the archetypes because the archetype is a broader trend level. And what we do is this. We gather all of this data, basically word groups. We hunt for archetypes within the word groups because all words are associated with archetypes at various different levels. Some have more power than others. So it's very easy to discern archetypes with bread baking, for instance, as an example, because it goes to food, right? Mm-hmm. And another archetype it's associated with is obviously, and especially in English, hearth and home. So those archetype levels are easy to determine. Oh, we're going to have food issues here because all of a sudden there's a big uptick in everybody, a lot of language around bread baking. But it's when we drill down into the details that are associated with that we start getting ourselves off because our monkey minds intrude. It's where we start actually thinking, and perhaps we really shouldn't, but there's no way to put in several million words within a report and let people sort through the details on their own, nor would it be particularly meaningful. And unfortunately for us, when we are correct in a spectacular fashion, it is always in the detail levels that allow us to do so. So some of our most spectacular ones are the power supply problems in the Northeast where the power went out a few years back. We had the details down to the gnat's ass on that, and it was a lovely prediction. It came out 3 weeks in advance. We had, I think, a 92% correlation with words that actually showed up in the newspaper and online. Now, another one where we were wrong, but we were correct, was the shuttle disaster. And it was sort of what we kept saying was there was going to be a maritime disaster. And I kept seeing big problems with some kind of a ship and all these problems that would be, emotive throughout the whole planet and especially in the English language speaking parts of the planet. And it turned out to be the shuttle disaster. And you think, well, but there's all these maritime and marine correspondences between our space endeavor and our terrestrial aquatic endeavors in the sense that they're both ships. There's all these marine associations. The shuttle was Columbia, gem of the ocean, which Columbia is itself an archetype, which goes back to Columbra, which is a particular constellation, and it goes on and on. So we were correct at the archetype and sort of blew it on about halfway down on the details. I sure hope that answers the question.
Okay, 28 before the hour with Clif. Hi, my name is Patrick Timpone, and this is OneRadioNetwork.com. Check out his work at HalfPastHuman.com. I think, Clif, 4 times a year you come out with a little nice report, pretty long, maybe 100 pages for $10, right?
That's correct, yeah, about 4 times a year, between 60 and 90 pages usually, yeah.
So between that and then selling eggs from your chickens, you do okay?
Well, no. Sorry, I'm a vegetarian and I couldn't exploit chickens that way.
I see. So even when you take them, I see. Boy, you're a hardcore vegetarian.
Well, you got to walk your talk.
You got to do it, yeah?
Yep.
All right, Clif, now here's something I've been wanting to ask you. A lot of folks calling. Okay, for those of you on hold, stay right there, turn your computer down, and we're going to get to you. Just listen to the program. Now, the whole money thing is curious because I'm quite a student of money because of my relationship with Andrew. And my theory is that most people don't really understand what's going on, so they think the world is going to crash in a hell in a handbasket because they don't understand how these boys control the game. That's just my opinion, right?
It's not wrong.
Okay, so say if I'm correct, And this is what Andrew has taught me over the years, and he's been right so far. I mean, he doesn't see anything crashing and burning because he just argues, Cliff, hey, there's no profit in a collapse. You show me where there's a profit and they're going to have one. All right. I like that. Now, if people think the other way and you guys pick up all this bad information, I mean, don't you end up predicting stuff that's not going to happen because the people don't know what's going to happen? Or are you saying, let me finish, or are you saying as soul, right, not as the mind, as soul, as spiritual beings, the people do know what is going to happen, and that's what you pick up on?
That's our supposition.
Okay.
And that's what we attempt to do.
That's pretty tricky business, Cliff.
It's tricky business, but we make the assumption that we live in a highly organized. Well, we actually have a number of assumptions that there's evidence behind. We live in a highly structured universe. There's weirdnesses within the universe. The universe is self-balancing, which allows for a certain amount of slop. And we can pick up and have demonstrated that we've picked up linguistic clues to what will occur in the future. So there's no reason to suppose that this would dry up just because we were looking at a particular subject line or something. However, you have to know we do not pick up conscious impressions.
You don't pick up.
No, I don't care that someone writes out there, I think the economy is going to crash or the dollar is going to dive or something like this.
Right.
What we actually look for are references in gardening forums, for instance, or for other things where you might see some hint of an archetype which actually goes towards interpersonal transfer, which is the top level of archetype in human to human. And then it goes down, and eventually we would narrow it down towards currency, and we would say, lots of people in weird forums relative to, snake handling, bread baking, and gathering seaweed are all of a sudden looking at archetypes that are relative to currency. What's up?
Looking at archetypes, explain what that means, looking at archetypes of currencies.
Well, okay, say that you're in the business of gathering seaweed.
Okay.
And for most of the time of the year, you go online and you spend, X number of hours discussing with other people who gather seaweed the various elements of their seaweed business. Mm-hmm. But you'll find that in these discussions, rarely do the people that are sort of quasi-competitors, quasi-cooperators ever really get in and discuss money per se. They're usually discussing, environmental impacts and so on that may have peripheral aspects, but you don't usually see them in there discussing the price of the seaweed on the open market. Mm-hmm. But we'll occasionally find them start discussing ancillary terms that also relate to money, wealth, and so on. So if you were to take a thesaurus and you were to put in there money, and you were to sort of backwardly take it up the chain, you would see that money would go perhaps, if you went down and drilled down on money, money would become paper, particular notes, U.S. note, Euro note, and so on. If you drill back on money, you would see that money goes to currency. Currency has all these ancillary associations, but that goes back to wealth. Wealth again goes back to family, safety, surety, caring for, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're in there typing away in your seaweed gathering forum and you happen to say, just happen to consciously write in there, I'm concerned about Aunt May's health. And you're writing this in a more or less open forum, but you're writing it to people that know that you have this Aunt May and so on. You'll see this happening all the time, these kind of personal references. That individual within that forum has just expressed an archetype relative to health, relative to family with the Aunt May connection. We've now got that connected to that particular activity that this person does, and if we find that there's lots and lots and lots of people within that activity expressing these same archetypes, then we start paying attention. Wow. And I sure hope that makes sense.
Wow, yeah, it does. So let's see, if I understood what you're saying, you're actually... Do you feel then, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that as soul, as spiritual beings, we know a lot more than what we're conscious of, and that does come out into the way what we speak and what we say? Okay,
yes, you're correct in phrasing how I view things. My view of the planet is formed by the experience that I've had. I'm not this body. I'm not the personality, which is why I could give a shit about, about cult of personality or so on. Okay, but I am the total sum of all of the experiences I've had. So I am the experiencer. And in my view of universe, Every experiencer knows 100% of what's going to happen in the future for their whole life and probably for most of the lives of the people they will contact. However, it does not come through in our little conscious mind, consciousness with a small c. But big consciousness, consciousness with a large C, knows because consciousness is all that there really is. There are no such things as little rocks whizzing around that we call electrons. That's a bogus view of the reality that we live in. And as long as you start with the assumption that material world is permanent and material world exists as little hard things that are self-enduring, you're on the wrong trail. You need to see the world as energy. The whole universe is nothing but a giant ball of energy, and it's all vibrations at all these various different levels. And of course, if there is vibrations, if I'm correct, and it is all vibrations, then it's instantly easy to see why you could pick up a vibrational wave that we would think of as time, and thus you would know what would happen in the immediate future.
That's Clif High, Patrick Timpone, One Radio Network. Wow. You previously stated, this is Rick email from Chicago, I believe. You were going to buy a house. If I were going to buy a house, it would be better to take half and buy silver. Would taking half and buying gold be as good? You seem to have the preference for silver.
Well, the only reason I have a preference...
This may be a question for tomorrow, but go ahead.
Okay, the only reason I personally have a preference for silver is because I'm poor. I can't afford gold.
I see.
Gold's expensive stuff. If you've got the money, more power to you.
It's almost $1,200.
Yeah, exactly. But it stores, the same amount of silver would be larger, and so it'd be easier to store the gold, certainly, and they will both appreciate. There is a curious thing, though. Within because we do analysis, I don't put this stuff out there just as, this isn't like channeling where you just let the stuff flow through and you put it out on the net and be done with it, right? We get this stuff for our interpretations, and I'm not going to put it out there unless there's some realistic probability that this kind of thing could occur. So I go and I do analysis based on formulas that were first established by Buckminster Fuller in the late 20s and from 1928 through about 1934 with his Global Survey of Resources. Using that formulistic approach, I've discovered some discrepancies between the amounts of silver and the amounts of gold, and the industrial uses of silver versus the industrial uses of gold, and the planned hyperdimensional free energy kind of need for silver versus gold. And I'm of the opinion that sometime in the near future, and that near future might be 3 years, might be 2 years, might be 6 months, I just don't know, there's going to be a shift in the relative placement of gold and silver. That is to say, right at the moment, it might be 70 ounces of silver for 1 of gold. I just don't know what it is. I don't do that math. But it's a huge number. And it's going to go back to about 12 to 1 relative silver to gold, and it may even drop much below that if it becomes critical that we have silver for these industrial processes for the whole anti-gravitics, free energy, that kind of thing. And so thus silver may suddenly become really neat stuff to have.
Yeah. And of course the health uses of silver, that's growing in popularity.
Oh yes,
right?
Oh yes, no question there.
Yeah. 888-663-6386. Hi, what's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, good morning. My name